whatever you want to do.
I'll go sit down. That's awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, hi everyone, I'm back. Okay, now we are going to formally start our night. So here we go. Okay. Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. It's very, I don't know what the right word is, just inspiring, I think, to see all of you here tonight. This has been in the works for a while, and I think none of us really knew exactly what it was going to look like. And so I don't think you really ever do, right? Until it all comes together. And I just have to say that we're just so pleased. Like, we could not be happier with how this evening has turned out. So thank you to all of you for coming. And I just also want to thank our awesome, what did you call us? Mama team? Is that what we are? Mama committee. I just want to thank each of you individually for all of your hard work. I mean, honestly, this never could have gotten done. I can't even tell you guys. We just have such a great team that's so differentiated and have so many talents. And it is a God thing, I think, for sure, that we all came together like this because each of us has our own strengths, and I don't think you could have ever planned that. So just really heartfelt thanks to all of you for everything that you did. And also to Adam and to Father for supporting this and just being like, and Clary too, for like, just being like right on board with this as soon as it started. It's just really amazing, and I thank you so much. And then I also want to thank some of the parish staff too. Jerry is probably running around right now trying to do something for us, and she has helped us in lots of ways too. So just thank you to everyone. So I guess I shouldn't take too much time because I know we need to get rolling here. But I just wanted to say really quickly, just to tell you kind of what like our dream or our vision is for Families United in Faith. I just want you to know that it's not just one thing. What we would really love is for Families United in Faith to become ingrained in the culture of St. Therese School. And when you come here as a parent, it's something that is part of who you are as a parent at St. Therese School. And you know that you have all these loving, wonderful people who love Jesus around you and want to support you and lift you up. And everybody wants to work together to raise our kids so that they can stay close to Jesus. And I think that's the goal, right? Like our goal is to get our kids to heaven, to get our spouses to heaven. And I think in the world that we live in today, we have to do this in a community. And I think we had sent an email out to the attendees and had said that, Christ didn't start his church so that we would be in isolation. He started this so that we could do this together, so that we could be a community. And we were not created to be alone. Like Adam got Eve, right? So he was not meant to be alone. The animals were not enough. And we are not meant to, we were created out of love and for love. And so we are supposed to be doing this together. And we just think, we're just dreaming that this can become something big. And it's like, oh yeah, Families United in Faith. And we're also calling it FOOP, by the way, that's our acronym for it. And everybody just knows this is part of the St. Therese culture, and we are going to lift each other up in this community. And I just a quick note too, that this Families United in Faith was born out of prayer, and so I just want to encourage all of you, don't ever skip your prayers, because you never know what's going to come out of it. And I mean, if it weren't for these prayers and for the Blessed Mother and for Jesus looking down on us, we would not be here today. So I encourage you, pray. You never know what's going to happen. And even if you think like the efficacy of my prayer is not great, it is. He's always listening. And so with that, one other plug quick. I was supposed to click something, but I'm not. Just to the next slide. It's cool.
started and the work that they did here to bring you all together tonight. And I just love how, I would say, eclectic this group is, which is really the point, right? We are a community, and we are so grateful to be together. And we are coming together with preschool families all the way through 8th grade families. One 8th grade family who has their last graduating this year after 21 years here. All together, united in our faith, and praying together, thinking about our children, thinking about each other's children, thinking about our church, growing together, and it couldn't be more beautiful. Before I continue, I do want to acknowledge, what table number is that right there? Pat Strandberg, what table number are you? 4. If you are at table 4, please stand up. Including Kathy and John Cleveland over there. Let's give them a round of applause. These are longtime parishioners, and a lot of them former school families. And I think they inspire me more than anyone else. They just have such a love for this parish and school, and are always here supporting, asking how to support, or just even saying thank you. And they're just such a good model for us. And when I didn't know they were coming tonight. And when I saw them here, I was like, of course they're here. And I was like, this is their legacy. You know, they've been here for 30-some years, I'm guessing, supporting this parish and building who we are today. And that's one thing I've always loved about St. Therese Parish and School. So thank you very much. Okay, Andy, are you going to push next for me as I introduce? So I have this blurb that I was given about Pat and Kenna, but then it's on all of your tables, so I'm going to skip the blurb. So Allison and I have known Pat and Kenna for just about 20 years.
Yep.
I first met Pat on the campus of Notre Dame, riding his bike with dreadlocks, throwing a frisbee. Love it. Yes. So there they are. Pat's from Iowa, so I imagine they're giving a little tribute there to Iowa. Just frolicking through cornfields. Here next, I think we have some photos of the two of them together. This is actually from their rehearsal dinner. I have some connections, I guess. And, you know, Pat and Kenna are amazing, and you're going to find that out in a few seconds. And they are wild, they are fun, they are funny, they are relatable, because they're in the thick of it too. But they are centered and grounded on their faith. And I just continue to find it so inspiring, and they're so outspoken about it. And they have been so committed to any ministry that they have served. And you can read about their current ministries on the thing on your table, which looks beautiful. Nice job, by the way. So a couple more sweet pictures here.
Oh yeah, good.
See, there's the wild side right there.
We're Kenna's.
Yeah,
there they are.
She's goofy too, not as goofy as you. And one more, doing a rugged maniac. All right, please help me welcome Pat and Kenna Millay.
I would walk out if I didn't like you people so much. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for your investment in your families, with your children, to the school. It's such a blessing to be here. Man, you are our people. Man, do we get you. We have 7 kids from 14 down to 4. We have an 8th grader and a preschooler, and everywhere in between. Not everywhere. We don't hit every grade, but most of them. My favorite image, I think, of things that you understand, right? I'm going to tell you a story that I think is going to help you understand that this life that you and I are called to is not for the faint of heart. And I'm sure priesthood, religious life are also not for the faint of heart. I wouldn't know, but Father could tell you later on. But I know marriage, not for the faint of heart, right? A few years ago, so Kenna grew up in Hawaii. Her grandmother, until she passed away, lived in Honolulu as well. And her grandma would do the typical grandma thing, which is send useless stuff to our kids that they don't need at all, right? Which our kids loved. It was the greatest. A package from Hawaii was a treasure. It wasn't even like Christmas or a birthday, just like Tuesday. Here's some crap from Walgreens. You want it? You know, just ridiculous, hilarious grandma stuff. And one particular Tuesday, we were having dinner, and a box had come that day, and it was full of all kinds of fun Hawaiian stuff that you can't get on the mainland. So like fun Asian candy and goofy snacks and stuff. But there were also these little toys that were, I got to describe them to you. There were 4 animals, because at the time, we had 4 children on the outside, and Kenna was pregnant with our twin girls, so there were 2 children on the inside, okay? So there were 4 little animals for the kids that had already been born, and they're little animals as if, you got to picture like if an animal was hugging a palm tree, okay? Right? What? Like a koala bear, right, exactly. We have an argument in our family about what to call that animal. Kenna says it's not a bear, and I say it looks like one. So like an animal hugging a palm tree, right? So the arms like this and the legs like that, okay? And each animal came with a straw, and you would stick the straw through so the animal is hanging onto the straw, okay? And then when you turned it on, when you drank through the straw out of a cold drink, the animal would make the sound of that animal. You're not appreciating how awesome this is, you guys. It was like our dinner table is always a zoo, but never more than that night. You know what I mean? There was like a lion roaring over here. There was like a zebra. What do zebras do? Do they bray? They bray. Yeah, sure. There was just a cacophony of animals. It was the greatest thing ever. And I know that you who have children, you have those moments of like, this is so good, man. Like, because of a goofy little straw animal, no one was fighting. It was just glee and joy, and everyone was sitting. They were sitting at the table in a seat because they had a toy entertaining them. It was glorious. And I sat back for 30 perfect seconds and said, Lord, what a beautiful family life you have called me to. This is wonderful. And then things began to happen. And the first thing that happened was the straw belonging to our youngest kid at the time, Damien, who was about 1.5, 2. His little animal fell and rolled under the table. So he went to go get it, and he stood up under the table, bang, bashed his head on the bottom of the table, okay? So he's hurt, but Damien's the kind of kid that when he gets hurt, he gets more embarrassed than physically hurt, right? So he was just mad that people were looking at him, basically. So I don't care what anyone tells you, Grubner, I try to be a good dad, okay? So I go to console my son. I pick him up off the ground, but he sees me coming. And again, he's hurt, but he's also really embarrassed. So he sees me coming. In his humiliation, he flings himself backward, bang, bashes his head on the ground. So now he's legitimately hurt. And I start to do that thing that dads, and maybe moms do too, of calculating like, can toddlers get concussions? Or is their skull squishy enough that it's like an airbag up there? I don't know the details. I'm not going to WebMD it right now. My son's crying on the floor, right? So I start wondering this. I do pick him up eventually, and he is mad now. Like, he is seriously pissed. So he is flailing, full-blown tantrum in my arms, so much so that he, I think, accidentally, takes the straw that he had just picked up off the ground and flings it directly, jabs it into my right eyeball. And I mean real hard, you guys. Like, Lord, heal the blind man. Like, I was convinced it was over for this eye, right? So I'm holding my eye into my head, I think, with this arm. I'm holding Damien with the other hand, and he is still flailing, freaking out, right? I put Damien down, and I'm trying desperately not to, let's say, teach our kids new vocab words, right? So by doing that, I'm slamming the wall of the dining room with my hand out of anger and pain, right? And again, no matter what anyone tells you, I rarely punch walls, okay? So Trey, who was about 4 at the time maybe, gets really scared because Daddy's fighting the house, and he doesn't normally do that. So Trey starts to cry at the table because he's afraid of what's happening with Daddy, okay? In the midst of this noise and chaos, Ella Claire, who was maybe 8, 9 at the time roughly, in this little quiet voice that makes you really pay attention, she goes, Mommy, because she was trying to get Kenna's attention, because what she was noticing was that Xavier, who was about 6'7" at the time, he was so stressed out by World War III going on around him, and he had so much to eat at dinner that he was starting to gag and lurch at the dining room table, okay? So I give Damien to Kenna, who has 2 children on the inside, so she's now carrying 3 kids. I take my hand off my eye, pick up Xavier, carry him to the bathroom, where he immediately releases his dinner all over the top of the brand new toilet that I had just installed with these 2 hands 3 days earlier, and it was so clean, you guys. Not in the toilet like a human being, on top of the toilet, right? Like, psh, a splash factor. It was insanity, okay? In the midst of all of that, the twins, by the way, were the happiest of all, because they were just bouncing around in there. It was like a little noisier on the outside for them, probably, but not much. We're kind of loud anyway. Probably, at the end of that night, Damien does not have a concussion, at least not one that we were able to diagnose. I think he's fine. Trey does not have emotional distress, to our knowledge, at least not from that, because he knows now that I was not fighting the house. I was just in a little bit of pain. Xavier was not sick. He was just really full of food. And then he was not full at all anymore. Ella Claire was the MVP of the whole night, because while this was all we were dealing with, all these boys, she cleaned up from dinner. She got the dining room table wiped down, the whole thing, right? All the kids went to bed. We sit down on the couch at like 9 o'clock and laughed for like 30 minutes straight, right? Of like, this crazy life is so fun and so wild. Even the times where you don't think it's fun in the moment, but in the back of your mind, you're like, man, this will be a great story. It sucks now, but it's going to be such a great story later on, right? And it was this beautiful moment in our lives of remembering like the purpose of why God did this for us, right? Like why I met this beautiful woman who was born in Hawaii. I grew up in Iowa, and she grew up in Australia and Florida, right? But she lowered herself to my cornfield standards, and actually she loves corn too. That's why we were running through the cornfield. Like how God brought us together because he had a dream and a vision for our family that ultimately is for our happiness because it involves his love at the center of it, right? And you're sitting next to a person right here tonight that you have a very similar story with. That of all the human beings in the world, God brought you together with this one person because he has a dream and a vision for your life, for your children's happiness, because it's centered on him, right? The stuff we're going to talk about tonight is encouraging, I hope, and it's also challenging, I hope. And the reason it's encouraging is because you already have made a decision to found your family on faith. You would not be sitting in a church on a Saturday night if you had not made a conscious, intentional decision that faith is a core value of our family, right? So you are on the journey. You have made some amazing decisions and commitments already, the two of you together. And the reason I say it's challenging is that every single person in this room can stand to do things even better, can stand to be even more focused on our priorities, and to live in accord with our priorities. We can stand to be more prayerful, more humble, focus on virtue more with our kids. The presenters that they've brought with you here tonight, we might have more work to do than you, which means you have lots to learn from us. It's going to be great. We're going to do it together. May it be encouraging, may it be challenging for all of us, right? What I'm going to ask for our good volunteer for our Mama Committee to do, if you don't mind, is to pass out a little handout to everybody. Thank you, Carolyn. We're also going to have some pens available. I would like to give a specific shout out to Jerry in the back. Jerry was doing us a big favor of running around and collecting pens for y'all as if it were an Easter egg hunt. I saw her back there grabbing pens off tables because she loves you and she wants you to be able to take copious notes. So they're going to pass out handouts that we'll refer to throughout the evening, and you can take those with you. That's our free gift to you.
So as we have been introduced in a variety of different ways tonight, unlike ever before, maybe I'll just offer a formal introduction of who we are and how on earth they ended up choosing us to speak to you all to kick off this initiative. So we are Pat and Kenna Millay. As you've learned, we are parents to 7 kids, ages 13 down to 4, and most notably, it is our 12-year-old's birthday tonight. So he says thank you because he ended up with Domino's Pizza and cookies and cream ice cream cream, and he's having steak and sushi tomorrow. So it's all good in his world, okay? But 7 kids. We live over in Cottage Grove. We are parishioners at St. Joe's in West St. Paul, which is the first time we got to encounter Father Andre when he baptized one of our boys. And we are the co-founders of the Martin Center for Integration, which is jokingly our 8th child, but also not jokingly, the most demanding of our children, I'd say right now. Named after Louis, Zélie, Therese, the Martin family, as just these models of faith and holiness in the midst of mental health distress, mental health disorder. So we have a podcast, which we'll share more about later. We get to speak and train with people like y'all throughout the country, and then we have a clinic at St. Helena in South Minneapolis as well.
So you can keep that one. That's my gift to you. So before we get too far down the road of practical things that we have discovered in making faith the center of the life of a busy family, I think it's really important to not beg the question. I think it's important to spend just a moment talking about why faith in the first place, right? We're not going to take a ton of time on this because, again, you are here. You have made the decision up to that point. But I think for every human being, for every sinner, there can be this nagging voice sometimes that says, but is it really that important? Does it really matter that much? I mean, like, yeah, I'll go to Christmas Mass. That's obvious. Easter, duh. But like the 23rd Sunday of Ordinary Time, nobody gets excited about that. You know what I mean? Like that little nagging voice that, like, when things get busy, whispers, it doesn't matter that much. It's okay. Just miss it, right? One of my favorite people ever that I'm contractually obligated to mention in every talk. That's not true. That's made up. But C.S. Lewis is one of my favorite people that I've never met. Our 4th child, Damien, his middle name is Lewis, after C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis one time wrote, "Christianity, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important." See, a lot of people are Christians for many different reasons. I think the testing point for anyone's faith is getting down to brass tacks and answering the question, am I Christian or am I Catholic because I believe it is true? Or is it because it's what my parents are? Or is it because it's what my friends are? Or is it because it has some nice moral teachings? Or the people there are so friendly? That may all be true. I hope all those things are true, right? But when it comes down to it, is it true? Because it's either true or it's not. If it's not true, then Christianity doesn't matter at all, and neither does Catholic education, by the way. If it is true, there is nothing in the universe more important. And Catholic education is a part of that importance, by the way. The only thing that Christianity, and therefore Catholic education, by the way, cannot be, is kind of a big deal. That's the one thing it cannot be. Now the problem is you and I live in a world, and my life most times, looks like it's kind of important. Like, I will pray when I don't have something better to do, right? I will pray when it's convenient. I will pray when I feel like it. I'll pray when there's a style of prayer that really speaks to me and comes easily. It's either true or it's not. So what does it look like to pay attention to your children's soul and to help to raise them in a faith-based family on a firm foundation, based on the foundation that you've already begun? Kind of the verse from Scripture that we'll use to kind of frame our evenings on your handout there. It's from Matthew chapter 7. "Everyone who listens to these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and buffeted the house. But it did not collapse. It had been set solidly on rock. And everyone who listens to these words of mine but does not act on them will be like a fool who built his house on sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and buffeted the house, and it collapsed and was completely ruined." The fact that you're here means that you know what kind of a foundation you want for your family. So hopefully, God willing, you can take a few things either from something we have to say or something you hear from your spouse or someone else in the room tonight that's going to help you build even more firmly on that foundation.
So I'm a marriage and family therapist and have had the privilege of being in private practice for 8.5 years now. And when clients come to me, they are 99.9% of the time in a state of distress, right? No one really signs up for therapy because things are going really well. And so when they come to me and they start unpacking their story, what often happens, almost always happens, is that as an outsider, objectively listening to what's going on in their life, I recognize incongruences between who they say they are and how they're living. I recognize things like, I say I'm a family person, but I feel so anxious around my in-laws, right? And it creates this discomfort in me because I want to love them, but they kind of drive me crazy. Or they say, I'm committed to my husband and my children, but I gotta be honest that I have fantasies about a single life, a life free of these responsibilities, these duties, this pressure. Or, I know that what my children need from me is stability and security, but I just seem to always yell and respond in sarcasm, right? The incongruence, right? I know who I wanna be, I know what my ideal self is, and then here's how I'm actually acting. Here's what I'm actually living out. And that incongruence is what can drive the depression or the anxiety or the obsessions, the intrusive thoughts. And so they come seeking my help. And my first step is to go, hey, can we name those incongruences? They say one thing, but they're living another. And so tonight, we are talking about living a more congruent life, a more integrated life. Tip number 1 is embodying family values. We only have 3 for you tonight. We thought about 5, and I was like, that's a lot. Let's go down to 3. So tip number 1 is embodying family values. The things that I say I value and believe and want to set my life upon, are they actually the way that I'm living it out? And not just in like big bullet points, but like in the little stuff. In the little stuff that builds up, that compounds, that creates meaning, that creates a purposeful life, the kind of life that my clients are looking for, that they know they're made for, and the unrest in them is because they don't feel it, they don't experience it. I'll say to my clients very gently, it sounds like your values are misaligned. Can we look at this? Can we unpack this together? Time, money, emotional energy, intellectual energy is being spent on things that are drawing them from the values that they profess into other areas. And it's often unintentional. They don't set out to be fragmented, right? They don't set out to be duplicitous and to live like a double life or something. But it just happens without a sense of intentionality, without really being purposeful about how they are using their time, their money, and their energy. It can happen. It's happened to me. It happens to me. It's something we have to be intentional about and attentive to. This goes on for all of us on some level. If we took a moment and looked at my own life, if I had the time to like crack things open for you, we would find incongruences, right? We would find ways that what I say and what I do aren't matching up, and that's a source of some kind of distress for me. This is the result of the fall, by the way. So none of us need to feel ashamed about this tonight, but more like, okay, so if I know that about myself, what do I do with that? How do I address that? How do I attend to that? If you ask me what I'm spending my time, my money, and my energy on these days, you will know my values. If you ask me about the goals I have for my business, my family's life, my personal life, my physical health, my friendships, you will know my values, right? The fruit will be born and you'll know the quality of the tree. Our values, our truest values, are reflected in our behaviors, our choices, and the things we are willing to make sacrifices for. I was thinking about how our organization, the Martin Center, we have 10 clinicians who are amazing, one of whom many of you may know, Addie Diaz, and we have regular social gatherings on our calendar because we love joy. It is one of our core values, and we love to have fun, and it's a business expense, and we can write it off, let's be honest. So anyways, That is a value, right? We prioritize money in our budget. We make time. We send out an invite months in advance. Save the date, guys, because we're going to do something fun this night. We make space for that to happen. Hiccups occur, and we find a way around it. We problem solve it. That is how committed we are to it, because it is a value that we want to live out. We have 3 kids in football right now. We have 3 sons, and all 3 of them are in football right now. We have 11 practices and games on a weekly basis. If I told you, like, we don't think about sports much in the Malay, you'd be like, BS. Like, you people care about sports and athleticism and competition. Like, that is a value that we clearly hold, right? And it shows up in the way we spend our time and our money and our energy. You all value Catholic education. You value a relationship with Christ for your children. You spend your time, your money, and your energy at things like this, in a school, in a parish, in a place like this. Values give our life direction and a sense of purpose. And the more we can be explicit about what we say and what we do, the more those can be drawn together and can be cohesive, the more purpose, the greater sense of meaning our lives will have. This world is filled with things that I could orient myself toward, and things that are very attractive, and I do. I stray off the path and I get drawn into things. A life without values is chaotic. You know, some clients will come in and they are just all over the place. I'm like, you are like a leaf blowing in the wind, because they're chasing every shiny little thing. And I'm like, we got to get clear. Like, what is this one life that you've been given about? Let's bring it down to center. Let's ground this baby. Values anchor us so that when the winds blow hard, we can stand against it. We can fight against it. Tonight, we're going to be so bold as to say that the greatest value, the thing that gives us most direction, our life's greatest purpose, is a man. And he has a name and a face and a story that we all get to know. That Jesus Christ, is the greatest value we can have, even more so than this parish, even more so than Catholic education, than St. Therese School. That all of those are only so good as they lead us to Christ himself, and that he, the person of Jesus, the second person of the Trinity, like, he is what we are seeking when we come to a place such as this, when we give our time and our money and our energy in a place like this. I want to give a caveat that I'm not saying that we all need to like quit our like corporate or secular jobs, or like sell our small businesses and all become like youth ministers and like work for the church explicitly. Like, the church doesn't need that. That's not what it needs. It needs us to go out and to be leaven. What I'm saying is there are ways in which we can bring our faith into everything we are doing and everything we are about, when we see this as the crown jewel of our life's values. When we see this as the lens through which we look at our priorities and the ways we're going to make our time, our money, and our energy expressed in this world, that if it's through this lens of what is going to draw me closer to Christ, then we are going to be in greater cohesion, greater integration, greater alignment. So, one note on your handout is a QR code for said podcast, This Whole Life, where we are seeking sanity and sanctity one episode at a time. And there's an episode from way, way back in our early years, like 2 years ago, on receiving your values that can be a really helpful accompaniment if this is a conversation, especially with your spouse, that you'd like to continue.
Continue, because you're going to begin it in about 20 seconds. So, what we're going to invite you to do is, with your beloved that you have gathered with here tonight, at the bottom of your handout on the first page, you've got some blanks there. And what I'm going to ask you to do together is to have just a brief conversation and to jot down some notes. Again, if you need a pen, you can request one. I know they've been collected off of all the tables at St. Therese, and I'm sure they'll want them back at some point. What we're going to ask you to do is, if someone just was an observer of your life, if your life was a reality TV show, buckle up, first of all. Second of all, what would they say are the top 10 values in your family? If they saw the way that you spend your money, your time, your energy, what would they say are the top 10 values of your family? Okay? We'll give you about 4 or 5 minutes. If it takes longer than that, you're overthinking it anyway. 4 or 5 minutes, talk together, and just jot down those 10 things preferably in order, okay?
I didn't think about that. So they started at 7:43, so we can give them till 7:15.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Yeah, I'll have to hustle through the rest of these things.
He started way late. I do not feel bad about that. And I hope that's not picking up on my.
Close out the discussion and then pass it back to you after that. Okay. Just those two tables right there. Give you about 30 more seconds to finish strong. That's right, exactly. Yep. I won't sing it. All righty, friends. Wrap it up. Good work. Thank you for a little conversation. Thank you for a little reflection. I sometimes assume it goes without saying, but if it doesn't go without saying, if you are here tonight without a spouse or a significant other, you are not less than or anything like that. I'm really glad that you get a chance to reflect on your own family values, whatever your family system looks like. So thank you for taking the time to do that. The ongoing conversation that you'll get to have throughout the course of the evening and then maybe later on tonight and this week is the obvious next step is if a stranger observed these 10 family values, is that what we actually say our family values are? And are they in that order? So are we living in accordance with the things that we desire most for our family? Or like Kenna mentioned, is there a little bit of dissonance there? Chances are, if you're a sinner like me, which maybe you're not, but if you're not, you're probably in the wrong place, right? If you're a sinner like me, there's probably some difference between what I say I want and what I'm actually living, right? So what do we do with that?
So looking at our second tip here, which is building your family on Christ. I'm thinking about going back to, is it Matthew, that passage that Pat shared at the very beginning about building our house on rock. And if that rock is Christ, that everything about our life would reflect him. We at the Martin Center just had the really bittersweet experience of saying goodbye to one of our clinicians who left to join the Sisters of Life, which is a religious order out in the Bronx in New York. And one of the reflections that she was really praying with throughout this year was like that my life would be, that I would be incense, that my life would be fragrance of you, Lord, right? That everywhere I go, I think Mother Teresa was fond of saying such a thing, that like, that I would leave the fragrance of Christ wherever I go, that people would know Christ's presence, maybe not explicitly, but at least implicitly, by how I lived and how I interacted and how I treated them. So building our life on this rock of Christ, because for all of us here who have, lived long enough into our adulthood, we know that everything else is shifting. Everything else is that house on sand. Everything else is fleeting. The job, the stage of parenting, the admiration of a friend or a coworker or a boss or everything is changing, and he is the eternal. He is the thing that is steadfast, and he says, I will never leave you. I will never be different than faithful to you, than here for you, caring for you, abiding with you. I guarantee that you already have all of the ingredients for a vibrant, faithful family life founded on Christ. No matter where you are on the spectrum, right? No matter if this faith thing is new for you, or if, you are like, this is old hat, like we have got this down, we could have given this talk tonight, what the heck? Wherever you are on the spectrum, you have the ingredients. Are they coming together? I was thinking about it's one thing to have flour and sugar and eggs in the pantry. It's another thing to mix them together and bake a cake, right? To draw it together in an intentional way with a sense of purpose, knowing what our values are. And if being in relationship with Christ is not first and foremost about rights and wrongs, right? It's not about a moral code. That is certainly part of, when we love him with our whole hearts, we desire to live in the way that he calls us to. But that's not the first, right? The first is this desire to be in communion with him, to be united with him. So if this is about a relationship with Jesus, first and foremost, then being faithful, leading a family in faith, is about letting every part of your life speak to that. Pat was asking me, hey, for this talk, could you generate a list of ways that it's not about adding stuff on to our life. It's not about, okay, so we're going to go carve out an hour of family quiet prayer. No, it's about going, what opportunities already exist to infuse it even more intentionally with Christ. So my list is on your sheet, and I hope you can add some things, and we'll let you talk about that in just a moment in some discussion. But things that I was thinking about, number one, saying grace before a meal, which is maybe thanks, Kenna. That's obvious. But really, tonight, literally, can I be honest about what happened today? Okay, so Pat was like, okay, guys, come on over. It's time to pray. We just come home from 2 football games. He was like, okay, come on over. It's time to pray. And kids were doing their thing, whatever. And he was like, fine. And he started praying. And I said, no, stop. I was like, they need to come over and we need to pray together. It's so easy, guys, right? So easy to not do the hard thing. And parenting is so hard. It's filled with so many hard things. And suddenly we're slipping. And we're I do believe this is important, but also they're really whiny and tired and crabby and hangry. Saying grace before a meal, it is not to be underestimated. Praying for ambulances and fire trucks. This has spurred so many conversations in our car. First of all, a lot of mine will be about being in a car. We drive a 12-passenger van. There's a lot, we work, live, go to school 30 minutes away from each other. We're trying to figure it out, guys. But we have a lot of time in the car. And so these opportunities to say a prayer, and then for our 5-year-olds to be like, why are you praying? We don't even know who's in there. We don't even know if it's that big of a deal. Like, why are we praying? Conversations about healing, about what's even actually more important than that person being physically well, like their soul. It's the things that kind of, ignite really great conversation as a family. A morning offering. So this is one that we pray, again, in the car on the way to school, but just really dedicating the day to the Lord. And it's a small prayer. All of our kids have memorized it. So maybe it takes 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And then from that, it often turns into, hey, what's going on today? What's something you're really excited about at school today? What's something you're not looking forward to in school today? Can I pray for you for that? Or at minimum, like, I'm going to make a mental note and check in with you, child number 3, about that thing later today. And again, even if we aren't explicitly maybe like saying a prayer over the child in that moment, we are communicating the love of Christ when they're like, Mom, remember that I had that science test that I really wasn't looking forward to, or that I was going to go to art class and have to sit next to Joey again, who really just bugs the heck out of me. Like, communicating that love and that presence in these small ways. An act of spiritual communion, this is one that our family adopted in the pandemic. This is like one of the 5 things I can say really came well for us out of the pandemic. That acknowledgement of the Eucharist as the source and summit, and saying to our kids, like, Jesus is so powerful and he desires to be with you so deeply that he's not contained by physical things, that he can come into your heart if you ask him. So can we start our day as we drive, sit in rush hour traffic, asking him to come into your heart? So again, a 30-second prayer that could be memorized and shared together. A decade of the rosary while driving or waiting. I'm a really big fan of using a decade while we're waiting. My children will tell you about that and maybe how crazy it makes them feel. Blessing our kids at bedtime. This is maybe one of my favorites. And the thing that I love about it so much is Pat has come to adopt, it's from Numbers, the book of Numbers, a pretty traditional blessing that goes like,
May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you. May the Lord be kind to you and give you peace.
and then I
So
say,
slower and more intentional.
yes, yes. And then I say, like, whatever, give them their full name, and I say, like, you are the beloved daughter, the beloved son of God. Stay close to Jesus. Like, so simple, but so heartfelt. And usually they're like, Mommy, rub my back or rub my head while you say that. A blessing at bedtime to just wrap up whatever the day was like. Some of you guys, brushing teeth, it's difficult. And like, I'm like, I don't like going to bed mad at you, but I'm like always mad at you when you go to bed because of this.
The worst part of my day. And it's no exaggeration. I love my children, and I hate their teeth. Because they,
We also have a lot of teeth to brush, so that's
they're
fair.
all out anyway.
Yes.
These are all baby teeth. Why am I spending so much effort cleaning temporary teeth?
So anyways,
Okay.
so even when we've like yelled and, they've refused to open their mouths and all sorts of things, right? To end the day with just like this sweet note is like, I'm going to give a plug for like mentally healthy, like to end in a state of peace and reconciliation, and for them to be like, in our house especially, like Mom was about 50 million things today, but at the end of the day, like she really looked at me, she loved me. Sometimes I'll even throw in like Lord, I'm so grateful that Damien is my son, not for anything he did today, Lord, but just because of who he is and that you would choose me to be his mom. Like, man, I am so blessed. Something simple like that, right? No theologian here, but to be able to call on Christ in that explicit way, like what an act of vulnerability, that you would like go out on that limb and that your child would say, like would know, at least internally, maybe not tell you explicitly, but would know like my mom, my dad is willing to be so tenderhearted with me, that the love of God and the love for me would drive them to such vulnerability, right? Take such a risk in our relationship. Okay, what else have we got? Looking them in the eyes and saying, I love you and I'm grateful to be your mom and dad. Absolutely. Highs and hards at dinner or bedtime. So the toddler that Pat was talking about in his straw story that impaled his eye is still a pretty angry 7-year-old, I gotta be honest. He's got a pretty wicked temper. And so he is difficult for me to, I always love him, I don't always like him, but he's difficult for me to connect with sometimes. And what I have found is he really, I think, has a hard time in the chaos of the greater family life. But one-on-one, man, when he's in his bed, he'll say like, maybe it's a little bit stalling bedtime, but I think he sincerely wants to share with me, and he'll say like, highs and hards, Mom? Should we share highs and hearts? And you guys, he doesn't just want to tell me about his high and hard. He does not let me go until he goes, Mom, what was your high and hard? Like, you have to share. That's only fair. And he wants to know about, and I'm like, you do have a loving heart in there. Like, you do care about more than yourself. So those sweet moments, right? And again, like, not necessarily that either of us are talking about Jesus explicitly, but Christ is present. Like, we are in communion with each other, and Christ is present. And I'm saying, everything else can wait. The dishes, my emails, my quality time with your father, like, all of that can wait. And I'm going to take 2 minutes to hear your high and hard, which is probably going to be about PE, because it's his high of his life, and he's going to talk about it all the time. Okay, this is a fun one that I will credit our school for helping me walk with, which is using virtue language. So, especially as a therapist, I'm very aware of the ways that we praise our children and the ways that those messages about, like, you are worthy because you got an A on your test, or you are worthy because you made the baseball team, or whatever. And so just thinking about, like, yeah, but I do want to encourage, and I do want to affirm, and I want to catch them doing good, right? Which is a great parenting strategy. So how can I do that in a way that helps them know that anything that they do that is good comes from Christ, comes from their cooperation with the grace of the Holy Spirit? And I was like, virtues. We could talk about this through virtue language. And so instead of just saying, like, oh, thanks so much for being nice to your brother today, to say, you were so generous with your brother today. Thank you for that. Or, you really persevered during that football game. I saw you were feeling down about being 2 touchdowns behind, and you really just persevered, and I saw you encouraging your team. So to be able to couch this in a language that draws them back to who they want to imitate anyway, which is Jesus, right? Who they want to reflect in this world, which is Jesus. So this isn't about doing more things. Oh, I forgot one. Christian art and beauty in your home. This is something that, again, I didn't really realize how impactful it was until our kids started making comments, and I realized they were learning from the physical surroundings of our home, the crucifixes, the icons, the pictures of their saints by their light switches. I didn't know how impactful that was until they started, sharing about things, connections they were making in their own life. And I was like, where did you learn that? And they're like, well, from that picture, from that scene from the Bible that we have in our room. So the message tonight isn't about, like, let's do more things, right? Let's make our lives more busy and more full and make ourselves feel more anxious and frenetic. Like, no. This is about seeing the current, everyday things of life through this lens of what transcends. Through this lens of what's going to matter at the end of this life, right? When we're 90 years old in a rocking chair, like, what is going to matter? Relationship with Christ and relationship with one another. This is about giving everything in your life, your schedule, your conversations, your outings, your entertainment, all of that, and saying, how can we do this in a way that it would be that fragrance of God? In Paul's letter to the Corinthians, he says, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. Such simple things like eating and drinking could glorify God. Well, yeah, because if we are built on that house on the rock that is Christ, everything that flows from that can speak of him, can draw others, namely our spouses and our children, to Christ. And so this is good news, right? This is good news that we don't have to, like, revamp and overhaul everything. We don't have to, like, join a convent or turn our house into a monastery. Like, we can keep living these faithful lives that we're living with even greater intention. And the bad news is that even the smallest inconsistency can reveal that dissonance that we were talking about earlier, right? It can be an incrimination against our faith, that if there are ways in which we are being hypocritical or not being consistent, that our kids can perceive that. So how can we be faithful in everything with our children?
Did you hear the punchline? You don't have to do more stuff. Take a breath, relax, right? It's not about filling your schedule, finding an extra hour a day to fit in more things. What it's a matter of is giving your entire life to the Lord. saying, Lord, all of this stuff I do, the fantasy football draft, all the way down to Mass on Sunday, all the way up to Mass on Sunday maybe, all of it's yours, right? So next little opportunity for discussion or reflection, whether you've got somebody with you or not, just considering some of the activities that your family does, from faith things all the way down to studying for tests, going to work, playing football in the backyard. What are the things that your family does? And what are some opportunities to invite the Lord more into those things? Not adding extra things to the calendar, but how can I glorify God in the things that I do, right? Whether it's some of the things that Ken has just suggested, whether you've got your own ideas, we'll give you a few minutes to kind of consider that, okay? Thanks, enjoy.